Have you ever noticed someone who never posts pictures online? They don't post selfies, no mirror shots, no birthday posts, no captions, nothing. In an era when almost everyone is a content creator, where everything on the internet is screaming for your attention, these folks move quietly, almost like they're invisible. You scroll through your feed and wonder, why don't they ever post? Are they hiding something? Or have they just stopped needing to be seen? Because psychology says their silence isn't random. It's not insecurity, it's identity. The truth is, people who don't post often see life differently. They don't measure moments by how good they look on a screen. They measure them by how deeply they feel them. While most people chase validation, applause, and attention, these ones crave something quieter, and that's peace of mind. They find validation in presence, not performance, in reality, not reactions. And behind that silence, there's often a calm kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove or impress or constantly say, "Look at me." They already know who they are, and that's why they don't need to announce it. Because when you're genuinely content within yourself, the urge to broadcast your life begins to fade. So maybe the next time you come across someone who never posts their photos online, don't assume they're shy, secretive, or mysterious. Maybe they're free from the need to perform, free from the comparison game, free from digital noise. This is the quiet psychology of people who don't post their photos online. And by the end of this video, you might start to see them and yourself a little differently. People who don't post their photos on social media do not see the need to announce themselves. They don't disappear, you'll find them there. They're actively online, but quietly scrolling, watching, learning, noticing, not out of boredom, but out of curiosity. Because while most people use social media to perform, they use it to observe. They see the patterns, they notice how people shift when the camera's on, they see how validation has become a form of currency, and they choose not to play. Psychologists call this self-distancing. It's a mindset where a person detaches from the noise, not out of fear, but out of awareness. They've realized something many haven't. The moment you start performing for the internet, you begin losing pieces of who you are. So they stay quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because not everything needs to be seen. There's a certain power in being the watcher, in observing without craving the spotlight. Because when you stop trying to prove yourself, you start understanding yourself. They find joy in the background, peace in privacy, comfort in silence. They don't post to be noticed. They post, if at all, to remember, to archive memories for themselves, not for public applause. And that's what most people don't realize. Sometimes the people who say the least are the ones who understand the most. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's depth. But silence doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it's protection. Not everyone who hides from the spotlight is at peace with it. For some, not posting is a way to stay safe, a quiet rebellion against judgment, rejection, or comparison. Psychologists call it defensive withdrawal. When someone's been misunderstood too many times, mocked, or made to feel small, they learn to shrink their visibility. Not because they lack confidence, but because they've been burned by exposure before. They know how cruel the internet can be, how one photo can invite opinions you never asked for, how people will dissect your smile, your skin, your surroundings, as if you're an object, not a human being. So they choose stillness, they choose privacy, they choose peace over proving. It's not about insecurity, it's about self-preservation. Because some wounds don't heal under the spotlight. Some hearts recover better in silence, away from the noise, away from the eyes. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's not about hiding, but healing quietly, until they feel safe enough to show up again. But then, there are others. Those whose silence isn't born from fear, but from depth. They've looked around long enough to realize that not every moment deserves an audience. They don't post, not because they're afraid, but because they're fulfilled. They've traded exposure for experience. They've learned that real joy can't be captured, it's lived, felt, remembered. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation. When your validation comes from within, you no longer seek it outside yourself. These people move differently. They don't need to prove their happiness, they're too busy living it. You won't see them in every group photo, but they're the ones laughing the loudest in real life. You won't find them posting sunsets because they're the ones actually watching them. They value presence over performance, moments over metrics, truth over trends. It's not that they dislike social media, it's that they've just outgrown the illusion of it. Because when you start experiencing life in its raw form, you begin to see how filtered everything else is. And so they stay quiet, not out of disconnection, but out of reverence. To them, the most sacred things aren't meant to be uploaded. They're meant to be felt. But sometimes, silence has scars behind it. There were people who used to post. They used to share everything. They shared their smiles, travels, good moments, birthdays, love, achievements, and wins. Until something broke. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was themselves. Psychologists call this emotional withdrawal, a protective instinct the mind uses when it's been hurt too deeply. For some, the camera became a mirror that reflected a life they no longer recognized. So they stopped sharing. Not because they vanished from the world, but because they were trying to find themselves again. They realized how fragile peace can be when your happiness depends on reactions. How the same people who clap for you today might clap back at you or scroll past you tomorrow. So they retreated, quietly, slowly, back into the safety of their own world. And in that stillness, something shifted. They began to heal. They started to rebuild their identity away from filters and expectations. It's a quiet recovery, one that doesn't need to be broadcasted. Because not every healing story needs an audience. Some are written in silence, in prayers, in long walks with no captions. And that's the thing about people who stop posting. Sometimes they're not disappearing from the world, they're reappearing to themselves.
But not all silence is born from pain. Some is born from clarity. There are people who simply realize that they don't need to be everywhere to exist. They've outgrown the noise, the endless validation loop, the silent pressure to appear relevant. They've learned that peace tastes better than attention. Psychologists call this digital detachment, a conscious decision to create distance between who they are and how they're perceived. These are the self-aware minimalists, people who post rarely but live richly. They understand that not everything valuable needs to be visible. They no longer measure life by engagement. Their worth isn't tied to algorithms or applause. They've discovered something most people spend years chasing: contentment. They value presence more than performance. They find joy in the ordinary: morning sunlight, deep conversations, quiet victories. Because once you realize that life's truest moments can't be captured by a camera, you start living differently. You stop rushing to share. You start savoring. And that's what sets them apart. They're not running from the world. They're just choosing to experience it fully. They don't need followers to feel seen. They already see themselves. But here's where it gets interesting. The less you show, the more people wonder. It's the paradox of privacy, when silence speaks louder than visibility. You see, in a world that overshares, mystery becomes magnetic. Psychologists say humans are drawn to what they can't fully understand. It's called the curiosity gap, that invisible tension between what's known and what's hidden. And those who rarely post, who guard their private lives like sacred ground, naturally create that intrigue. People start to imagine their stories. They fill the blanks with fascination, because what isn't revealed is often more powerful than what is. Privacy in this sense becomes presence. Silence becomes allure. It's not manipulation, it's energy. The energy of someone who doesn't need to prove themselves. The energy of someone who's comfortable being misunderstood. And that kind of confidence, the quiet kind, is rare. It's the kind that doesn't chase attention, yet effortlessly attracts it. Because when you're rooted in who you are, you stop broadcasting your worth. You let it speak for itself. That's the paradox. The quieter you become, the louder your energy feels. Now let's talk about you. Maybe you're one of those people who rarely post. Your photos live quietly in your gallery, unseen, untouched. You scroll, you observe, you think, but you don't always share. And sometimes people notice. They ask why you're so quiet. They say, you've gone ghost. But deep down, you know, you didn't disappear. You just started protecting your peace. Maybe you've learned that not every moment needs proof, that happiness can be sacred even when it's private. Or maybe you've been through things that made you retreat, times when the noise felt too loud, when the opinions stung too sharply, when the idea of being seen started to feel heavy. If that's you, it's okay. Silence doesn't mean you're lost. Sometimes it means you found something the world can't take, yourself. But maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you post often, not out of vanity, but because it's how you connect, how you express, how you stay visible in a world that moves too fast. And that's okay too, because truthfully, there's no right or wrong way to exist online. There's only self-awareness. The point isn't how much you post, it's why. Are you sharing from confidence or from craving? From peace or from proof? From love or from loneliness? Your answer to that reveals everything. Because social media isn't the problem, our intentions are. So whether you post every day or once a year, do it from a place that's real, from alignment, not approval, from wholeness, not hunger. Because in the end, it's not about how the world sees you, it's about how you see yourself when the world isn't watching. Maybe this is what silence really means. Not absence, not mystery, but peace. Because in the end, not everyone wants to be seen. Some just want to be. The ones who don't post their photos aren't hiding. They're just living and existing on their own terms. Living moments they don't need to prove, feeling things too sacred to capture. And that's something our world often forgets, that it's okay to live quietly, to enjoy something without recording it, to celebrate a win without sharing it, to heal without explaining it. Maybe we've mistaken noise for connection. Maybe real confidence is learning how to live without an audience. Because when you can sit with yourself in silence, when you can smile at your own reflection without needing likes to confirm it, you've already won. You found something social media can't give you: stillness, self-acceptance, peace. So the next time you notice someone who never posts, don't assume they've disappeared. Maybe they're right where they're meant to be, present, grounded, and finally free. If this video helped you understand yourself or others a little bit better, don't just scroll past. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Here on Think Prof, we make psychology simple so you can understand people and master your mind. Because the more you master yourself, the more you grow.